Okay, this PARSHA starts off. This is the Beshalach Paro es ha'am, and the moment you see ha'am, it's always the first simon that we're talking about the Erev Rav. As Chazal explained, ha'am is like it's like a catchphrase. It's a nickname for the Erev Rav itself. It says ha'am Yisrael. It's on Yisrael. It's the Jewish people. Ha'am is talking about the Erev Rav specifically themselves. So even though the pasuk, the pshat of the pasuk, is talking about, it's talking about Bnei Israel, that he sent the people, that it's talking about the Erev specifically. He did, he for sure sent us. We left. We were forced to go, but the he sent was the Erev Rav. And the reason why it's important here is as the Orach Chaim points out, that it means specifically the Erev Rav, because when it says he sent them specifically to act as spies amongst the Jewish people. We forget. We go to the Parsha because we know Moshe's plan from the beginning. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu had planned to take the Jewish people out forever. He was playing games with Paro the entire time, saying they would go for 3 days and come back after 3 days until we serve Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And even though Paro was getting destroyed and the Makos are taking place and the whole thing's happening, and it seemed like the end of the Egyptian exile, because we know it's the end of the Egyptian exile is coming up. But Paro the entire time, up into this week's Parsha, believes they're really going for 3 days. After all he's gone through, after all he's been put through, that he still thinks it's only just a 3-day adventure. They're all coming back at the end. So that's when they say that they regret when they see they sent out the slaves and they sent out all this labor. They sent out. They had charata not because they thought, well, we'll send them for good and get rid of them once and for all and save Egypt, and then we regret it. But rather they thought that they were going to come back after all that Egypt had gone through and been destroyed and the whole thing. But still was all just for the sake of 3 days of serving Hakadosh Baruch Hu in the Midbar. And then he realizes, he wakes up that they're not coming back. So the Orach Chaim explains that that's one of the reasons why he said the Erev in the first place, because the Erev was to make sure they did not go past 3 days. That they were, specifically there to instigate and make Moshe's life miserable. Everything is completely upside down today. It's just completely inverted from what it's supposed to be, because those are all the perversions of the koiches that Hashem has put in the world for us. And one of the main factors in all of that is the Erev. So the Gemara writes the following thing, in a very charif paragraph. It doesn't read a lot about it here, but this one paragraph, but he says very, very specific. He says, "V'tachlis avodasein b'kibuz galius, he hakamas anshi amana l'shem yuchad beisha mashichin b'shar Yishalayim l'chazaras hashchina tachlis agula emes." Right. So he says that what we're supposed to be focusing on, our avoda, as part of the proactive process for he bring Mashiach, is the establishment of what he calls Anshi Amana. These are the term from the Gemara itself. Truthful people, honorable people, people of integrity, people who are not going to bend because of politics or money or things like that. But people you can rely upon for the sake of the 2 Mashiachs in the gates of Yerushalayim, specifically to return the Shechina, right? Tachlis Gula Emes, the true Gula was the Kiddush Hashem. The main point of the Gula, of the redemption, is the Kiddush Hashem. It's a Chil Hashem the entire time the Jewish people are in exile. It's a Chil Hashem the entire time the Jewish people are divided. It's a Chil Hashem the entire time the Jews are forced to live on foreign land. Yechezkel says, I'll bring the Gula, Hakadosh Baruch Hu says, and return you from the foreign lands just to end the Chil Hashem. It's a Chil Hashem for Jews to live in Chutz La'aretz. What can you do? It's exile. We're forced to sometime, but you can't.
He says that.
But you can't deny it. It's a Chil Hashem. It's a Chil Hashem because the world looks and they say, who are these people? What are they doing? These are the people of God. And the Orthodox Jews are arguing with each other. And they get caught in scandals. It's like it's all Chil Hashem. Okay, it's part of the life today in the world. We're functioning and we're doing all the things we have to do. But the bottom line is that when the nations of the world see the Jewish people living, and it's a Chil Hashem, when Jews happily live in Chutz La'aretz, Ke'ilu, they don't want to ever come home. Because the world sees that. They see the disconnect from Eretz Yisrael, and because they understand better than we do the disconnect from history, Jewish history. And therefore from the Torah, from Sinai. And the mandate of Torah of the Jewish people. It's all part of the Chil Hashem. So the whole point of the Gula, you can't forget, it's not just to get out of your visa bills and maybe get a little easier, dealing your mortgage for your house. There's all that may happen also in the end. Not to disappoint you, right? It may be like that in the end. You may be able to find bankers who are more rachmanis, visa companies who charge less interest, on their monthly statements. It comes in the sake of Kishusha as the prime reason. This is Al P. Rabbeinu Gra Zal Aleinu Lavo Le'ezras Hashem B'Gburim, right? We become a strong people. Hani V'Trei B'Shicha L'Lamod Heitav Kol HaBechinas HaTafkidahem Al Derech HaMaaseh. He says we have to strengthen ourselves and be brave people to learn all the different levels of Mashiach ben Yosef, so we can do what has to be done in preparation. Hataki Klali Shel Shnei Mashiachim, Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. The main purpose of these two Mashiachs, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, Yachad b'chol Doris, in every generation, Hu Agana u'Milchama Neged Shloshes Roshei Klipos. Right. The main part of the Mashiach, in every generation, you have both Mashiachs. Right? In every generation, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. In every generation. The question is whether there'll be a lot to reveal themselves and pull off the final redemption. But either way, you have them in every generation, and they're going to be functioning as leaders to specific roles. And that's primarily to protect the Jewish people from the three main klipot. There's the three main sources of tumah, the three main enemies of the Jewish people. It manifests itself. Doesn't manufacture, but it manifests itself in terms of specific individuals or nations, whatever the case may be. But the shorish, the spiritual shorish of those enemies are going to be rooted in the three main klipas of history. And who are they? Esav, Yishmael, the Erev Rav. Those are the three main klipot. They top the charts. The Tafkido HaMiyuchad Shemashiach ben Yosef, the main purpose of Mashiach ben Yosef is Neged Esav Klipos HaShmol. He comes specifically against the Klipa of Esav, which comes from the left side, right? You have the right side of Chesed, the left side of Gvura, the Kava MCE, which is Rachmin, and the side of Kedusha, but it's a combination of the two evils on the side of Tumah. So he comes against the left side, which is Esav. The Tafkidu HaMiyuchad Shemashiach ben David, Neged Yishmael Klipas Yamin, which is very interesting. Right, in these two sentences is extremely important key and clue to understanding what we're holding historically right now. According to what he just said right now, Mashiach Yosef had to have come and gone. Finished already. Why? Because he says the whole point of Mashiach ben Yosef is to defeat Esav. And Mashiach ben David is to fight against Yishmael. So today, Esav is no longer the issue. The Catholic Church has basically been broken. Esav was broken. The last Amalek effort was really Hitler Yamach Shmuel World War II. That was over. Esav is not at the same course. In fact, Esav went so far as to help establish, against their better wishes, their plans, the state of Israel. They've been supplying us with weapons over the last, 50, 60, 70 some odd years. The European continent has been neutralized to some degree to try and they've done the best they can to undermine the state and to stop the growth of the Jewish people, because Baruch Hu stopped the entire way through. They are basically very, very weak historically. Who's in the power today? All the Esav today, Europe, for example, and America, all the pressure Esav applies to the Jewish people today is only because of Yishmael. If it wasn't because of Yishmael, the oil and all the pressure of jihad and all that, they would leave us alone completely. We were until the Arabs came along and the PLO came along and all that, we were happily sailing to the next century as a state growing amongst the nations of the world. The whole world has become completely inverted and confused and anti the Jewish people, against all logic, because it is against all logic, because the Arabs are against all logic completely. There's a side with them over the Jewish people. You have to be against all logic. So it's all Yishmael. According to this, therefore, we are in the period of Mashiach ben David and no longer the period of Mashiach ben Yosef. He has come and gone. Whatever it was, whoever he was, whatever's supposed to happen, and there's all kinds of other remarking too. I could sell you a book if you want. It goes into more detail about this. But that's the idea of Mashiach ben David. He says, Shneihem Yachdav, right? The two of them combined together, Neged Esav Yishmael, Shnehem Shor B'Chamor, because Mashiach ben David is compared to a chamor, because he says it comes riding on a donkey. Mashiach ben Yosef compared to the shore, because Yosef is a shore, an ox, right? So he says, he's the Avkut, so Esav Yishmael, and the marriage, the combination This is amazing. This is incredible because when I first learned this, it wasn't as lamais as it is today. It was more theoretical than anything else. Today, you see it completely happening right before you. This is mamish nevuah. This is nevuah, he's saying over here. He wrote this back, or at least, the Shkap wrote this back in the 1800s. There was a Masorah going on for a long period of time. There was nothing in history at that time to even give you the idea to make this up. You could never have such a phenomenally accurate reality if it wasn't a Ruach HaKodesh and a Nevuah and a Masorah. And he says the actual marriage, the coming together, the shidduch of Esav and Yishmael, which is unprecedented. To have Esav and Yishmael working together as you have today, where did it all begin? It all began back in the Persian Gulf War, going back to 1990. That was the turning point. In the 80s, you didn't have it. In the 80s, back at that time, going back to Jimmy Carter's win and all that, the Americans were the great Satan. You did nothing. Somehow you sold oil to them anyhow for the money. For money, you can do things like that. You can deal with the great Satan. But philosophically and militarily speaking, Saudi Arabia was always ostracized for buying weapons and letting Americans use their bases if they had to sometimes. But the big turning point was when the whole Persian Gulf War took place for this. Saddam Hussein, or insane for that matter, goes ahead and invades Kuwait, an oil-rich, sitting on the Persian Gulf country, and expects nobody to come to its defense, like the Americans and all that. Well, there was good reason, because how do you fight a war that far away? Excuse me, just get over a cold still. How do you fight a war that far away? So they had to make a deal with the Arabs. And the Arabs had to make a deal with the Americans. And that's where Israel came in, and the West Bank, and land freezes and all that, and loan guarantees being frozen, because the Arabs said, we will forgo the great Satan thing if you will put pressure on the Israelis to stop building in Yehuda and Shomron, and threaten that if they don't do that, you will freeze the loan guarantees. And George Bush Sr. did exactly that. So that marriage was necessary in order to be able to create the situation that's happened today in the world, to put the pressure on the Jewish people, part of the final Gog and Magog scenario, to bring about Mashiach. So what brings it about? How do you actually make it possible to bring about two opposing powers that are so ideologically different from one another? How do you create this marriage against the Jewish people? He says the shidduch is done by the Armelius Sar Erev Rav. Armelius, who's the Sar of the Erev Rav, that's his job. He somehow figures out a way to be able to bring Yishmael and Esav together and make them one. Yechola lehachriv es Yisrael, to destroy the Jewish people. Ves kolam, and the entire world for that matter. Rahman Islam. Iker hashi'ifa shel Erev Rav. Oh, you want to understand the Erev Rav? This is, you don't find anything more descriptive and accurate than this. The main drive of the Erev Rav is she'ifa, what's driving them, what's pushing them, he says, Hu l'zaveg as Esav Yishmael. It's just to bring about Esav and Yishmael. I mean, you listen to the Israeli news, what goes on from the left of this country, how far the world is prepared to go, the Jewish world, the secular Jewish world is prepared to go, who knows how many millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, just for the sake of bringing about the shidduch of Esav and Yishmael. That's all they're doing. That's all they're doing. They're paving the way for that relationship. They're prepared to sacrifice the Jewish people on the altar of history for the sake of bringing about a relationship between Esav and Yishmael against the Jewish people. And that's the she'ifa. You ask yourself the question, how is it possible that Jews can actually go ahead and do this type of a thing?